I kind of feel like we should just not mention his name ever again. And then he'll actually
Jed
get to play
definitely
this year.
shouldn't pick him for any preseason.
No
awards.
shit.
Jed, you specifically don't get to say his name.
Jed's like a Madden curse with his preseason picks.
The
for
last
wide
2
receivers.
years, the receiver that I pick
Wasn't on the team by this
either
start
gets
of the
injured
season.
or
Yeah, pick
leaves the
somebody.
team.
Pick somebody you don't think is going to play.
Yeah.
For all your shit.
45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30. He's gonna go. Holy cow.
Big Red Junkies.
Game by day. Game by day. He gets better and better. He gets better and better. He gets Oh, man, woman, and child, he just turned this stadium inside out.
Right there with you.
Jin, motherfuckers. Happy to have you back, Jed.
Yes, good to be back.
This is the first time that we've talked since spring ball started.
Since you guys recorded during the Tennessee Creighton game, when I wasn't here, I almost wore my Tennessee shirt just to continue to celebrate that glorious victory.
That
but
video that you posted on Facebook.
I think we'll put a snapshot right about here.
Yeah.
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 He had the muskrat hat on and the whole fucking thing.
Good
He was- in
old
case you missed
Rocky
it,
Top.
Saying the shittiest rendition of Rocky Top I think I've ever heard.
It was atrocious.
It was fantastic.
Call it what it is.
I pissed off a lot of people.
Boo-hoo.
Did you really?
Yeah. And then I wore it again 2 days later at Easter, at Family Easter, and pissed off some people there too. So it was fun.
It's an Easter outfit.
Well, it was funny because the Purdue game was going on, Purdue versus Tennessee, and everybody's like, oh, you rooting for Tennessee again? I go, no, I want Purdue to win this game. Well, why you have the Tennessee shirt on? Just to be a dick.
For me, like we talked a little bit about this with Elijah, but it's just like I don't necessarily have anything against Creighton basketball. I have something against the fans
Yes.
that are Husker football fans and then douche on Husker athletics outside of that.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
I
But-
agree.
It is what it is. It's not a fucking Creighton show.
No.
Or a fuck Creighton show, one or the other.
Well,
What is the show today, BJ?
It's spring ball. We're talking about it. There's been 2 press conferences this week, which I think are fucking cool as shit. We've gotten to hear from a lot of people that we did not expect to hear from. Number 1 on my list is Dylan Rhule. I did not expect to hear from him at all this spring.
I wasn't really sure how they were going to do that, but it was smart that they brought up everybody.
Yeah,
and
all
not
on the same day.
Not just the one guy.
Yes.
Also, I like that, whether this was on purpose or not, I don't know, and I honestly, I don't care, but I just know fans in general and how they would have nitpicked the shit out of it.
If it was just him.
Well, not just that, but the order in which they would have came to
They
the
did the order
podium.
correctly.
Yes.
I actually thought they messed it up. I think they should have put Rhule in the middle of the 2. So that way there was no like.
Well, you could say they just did it alphabetically.
Okay, that's fair. I didn't think about that.
Because they actually did. I mean,
I didn't
that
think
was
about
how
that.
it lined up. But yeah,
I also think you have to start with the old guy first.
I agree.
He's gonna get his due in certain things for the whole season.
Mhm.
I think that it's irrational to think he's not going to see the field this year at all.
No, I agree.
At all?
I don't know that he'll see
Absolutely
this
not.
field. I don't
Even
know that
as
he'll
the
see-
quarterback, not as a tight end.
I was going to say,
quarterback.
I don't know that he'll see the field that much as a quarterback, like in a starting capacity, running the offense fully. But I don't see how you don't use him, especially in some run packages and some especially like goal line sets, things like that, where put a big body in there that can fucking run the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if he's doing a good job holding onto the ball in practice. That's going to be the biggest thing. Like a lot of people, we talked a little bit about this with Elijah, but it was a lot of people, they've already kind of written in pen that Rhule is the starter. You heard Damon Benning this morning on the radio talking about how when he was at practice yesterday, he was floored by Danny Kaelin.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely floored. Ravi talked about how they were at the Jet Award last night, and Damon walked in. The first thing he said was, "Danny Kaelin's no joke," or something to that effect.
He's definitely got some swagger to him, as you could see in the press conference.
I
very
think he already
comfortable with
sounds
where he
how a
is.
coach.
I was just going to say, he looked very comfortable on there.
Super.
I'm not saying that Dylan did not look comfortable, but if you were to say between the two, Danny Kaelin looked much more comfortable than standing in front of it.
They looked like they had
Of all
a
the
year
three.
difference between them.
Yeah.
Of all 3, in fact, I thought Danny Kaelin sounded the best. He sounds like a coach.
Yeah.
We've talked about that, though, like a couple interviews that he did before he even signed. couple interviews he did on the radio and things like that, or podcasts, he sounds like he's part of Rhule's staff.
Yep.
Like the dude's he's well spoken. He seems to understand what he's talking about. The biggest difference that I was really trying to analyze the difference between all three guys. I think Heinrich Haarberg kind of sounded not disinterested, but like less excited than he did
But that's
last
how
year.
he talks, and that's just his mannerisms.
sometimes.
It's not.
I picked up the same thing. I couldn't tell because he also kind of looked like he was sick.
A little
So
bit. Yeah.
I don't know if he was just a little out of it.
He always sounds like he just woke up.
But he
sounded more excited last year. He doesn't
did
sound as excited today.
He almost
Or
sounded
on
a
Wednesday, I
little
think.
defeated, but I feel like that's just because he's been through a tough week of practice. And
Well, and if he's been online at all offseason, all he's hearing is that he already lost his starting
well,
job.
you can't read the comments, kid.
And you get Sam McEwen asking him and bringing up the fact that, well, you're the returning starter. Well, you're the returning starter, like reminding him as we're going through the press conference.
he is. That's just
He is.
truth.
It's a fact.
He started half the season last year. He's the returning starter.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I noticed, though, between the three of them that I really liked about Rhule, I didn't like his mannerism. He seemed almost disinterested to be up there. Didn't really get nervous from him at all, but just kind of like, it's a spring football press conference. This might be a little ridiculous type of a feeling, which maybe that's a good thing. But I thought he gave the most broad answers. Like, he really went in depth on a couple different things. He brought up stuff that wasn't directly related to the question, but brought it back to the question. It seemed like he's put on display his football acumen, in my mind, I guess.
Did you take anything from the fact that he's talked a lot more about the team than he did about himself? Even with questions that were pointed towards him.
Well, that's because everything that's been talked about for the last basically calendar year of Nebraska football is Dylan Rhule, especially since he flipped.
But they even, they point blank asked him, what is something that you're doing well? And he's like, well, these guys are doing great. The running backs are doing,
Well, and both Kalen and Raiola talked about Haarberg and the leadership that he's shown, and the sounding board that they can go to ask questions, bounce things off of, and learn from him as well, and what Haarberg is doing for them as well.
And regardless of his role this next year, he's going to be an important piece just because he's the knowledge there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was interesting to me to hear all of them talk about, God damn it, why can't I never remember his name? The new quarterback's coach.
Thomas.
Yeah.
Thomas.
He, first of all, that was not what I expected him to sound like. I know that he's already spoken to the media, and I don't know if I wasn't paying attention or what, but there was a lot of stuff that he said that I'm like, come again, South? What? I couldn't tell what he was saying. But they all kind of seem to be excited about his professional background and the quarterbacks that he's worked with, because he's worked with Matt Ryan, and then obviously last year with the Steelers. That's a big thing. The one that I think I got the most out of, though, in that press conference alone was probably Satterfield. He almost seems a little fed up and fired up about things, and just kind of that, like, look, I'm here to coach football, and I'm the offensive coordinator. Stop fucking talking about somebody else calling the plays.
Well, I mean, he talked about how how good it is to have a guy that he knows very well.
They both reference how they'd worked together for 20 plus years and all that stuff, and I think that's awesome. And who knows, maybe it will allow him to call things better, but like we've talked about, I think he wasn't doing anything he was comfortable with last year, and he was just doing the best with what he had.
Yeah.
Can't torch him for the turnover.
I liked switching press conferences. I liked the defensive one where Tony White was and one of the things that we talked about last year with the new staff is how often the assistant coaches come up and talk in front of people. And they were referencing those three teams that everybody is split off to, and how it teaches all of the assistant coaches on how to be coordinators.
Yeah.
And that's going to benefit them for the future in their career and all this other stuff. So it's like what Rhule is doing isn't just developing players; he's also developing coaches.
He's developing everybody.
Absolutely.
He's developing himself.
It
helped. Heard Terrence Knighton mentioned it too. That he's like Rhule's done this. He said it 2 or 3 different times. I'm instantly going to Rhule on this. I'm instantly going to Rhule on this. And it's not a, hey, boss, what should I do? It's a, he's done this before. He has the experience to bring me up on this. And Terrence Knighton, I mean, he's a first-time coach.
Yeah. First time full-time coach. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was kind of one of those assistant to the assistant coaches before, but yeah.
Where was he at before? I don't remember that.
I thought he was in the NFL. Kind of like how Rhule was the assistant to the assistant offensive line coach.
Right.
Type thing. But also splitting off into those three teams, just as a whole, whether it's the coaches and the players, it helps with communication. It helps with teaching the young guys, what we talked about with Harburg and the other two quarterbacks specifically. They continue to talk about how you might be lined up next to somebody that you're not going to be lined up next to in the fall, and they might not actually know what's going on, but you got to be able to communicate to your teammate. Yep. You got to be able to teach them the right thing and the proper thing, the Nebraska way now, and what these coaches expect. So if you're one of the returning players, it's up to you to show what you learned last year and what we as coaches expect of this program.
Well, Damon was talking about that a little bit on the radio either yesterday or today because they got to go do that walkthrough, like a bunch of players they've been bringing through this last week. And apparently he was watching practice and he was just like, he talked about how enamored he was with certain guys that have been around there for a long time that maybe weren't necessarily like names that would pop, but that are grabbing dudes and having the conversation and this is the way we do it. This is the way we do it.
Well, and I know we weren't necessarily going to go into the second episode of that Chasing 3 because you haven't seen the whole thing yet. But
no, I haven't had a chance.
One of my favorite, and this is a guy that obviously does pop, but one of my favorite things in the entire thing was a big focus on Isaac Gifford throughout the entire show. And he would go through practices. They were doing the mat drills, and he would be picking guys up. Like they'd be off to the side, like during a drink break or something like that. And they're sitting down with their back against the wall. They're just dog-ass tired. They may be throwing up, whatever else. Every single person, he'd go up, grab their hand. No, get up. Like, just stand up at least. We're doing this together. And at one point also, they didn't get on the field in the correct way. And Rhule kicked them out, said, get out, come back on the field the right way. And when they went into the little hallway room, a couple of different guys were yelling at the guys like, this is how we do it here now, and all this other stuff, and Gifford was one of the big voices in there. And according to his dad, he basically last year, he was kind of questioning the process of, I've heard all this stuff from other coaches before, and it ends up being a lie. And he basically came home one day and was like, bitching and moaning about a bunch of things. And the dad goes, well, are you going to quit? He goes, hell no, I'm not going to quit. He said, then go back there and be a leader. Like, suck it up.
Good dad right there.
Yeah.
I'm sure his brother probably had a little bit to do with it too.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, man, when it comes to Gifford, I know that I wasn't the nicest fan of his last year, and I know that I was kind of hard on him for some of the blown plays that he had, especially down the stretch. But it's obvious that he is a major factor and a major leader, especially on the back end of that defense.
Yes.
And
especially with his versatility.
It's
where you can
huge.
Put it.
When you look at the number of new bodies that came in on the back end of that defense, him coming back and him making that decision to come back and be that leader, that's even if he doesn't play much, that's still huge. Yeah, but he's still going to start and he's still going to play.
He'll play a lot.
You don't have to be the best player on the team to be the team's leader.
No,
those are two things that are separate from each other. And so if you can properly motivate the guys around you and make sure that they've got their heads on right, I'm all for it.
And again, the best player in the quarterback room is not necessarily the leader, right? Because Harburg is the leader in that quarterback room.
For sure.
Well, he's not the best player.
He is right now. He is right now. Whoever takes the mantle as the starter will become the leader in that room.
No, I still think it's Harburg as far as in that room, but on the team, that's a different conversation.
That's fair. I think there's going to be a certain, like, just like on any team, if you bring in a rookie out of the draft on a team with a veteran quarterback that's not necessarily known to going to be there for a long time. At some point, there's a passing of the mantle, and that's going to have to happen eventually with whoever wins the job.
Yeah, I also hope that there's not one clear option for starting quarterback. Not because I think that Rhule isn't going to perform like we think he is, but that the other two step their game up.
They step
and
up
they actually
much,
push him and compete.
Yep.
Well, I just think the game is so different for what you're going to run when Harburg's in as opposed to the other two, that it's not necessarily to say that just because one of them becomes the starter, that Harburg isn't going to see packages run out. Like we've talked about so many times at Taysom Hill. Like, you have a weapon like that that's a big body that if you can limit his turnovers, you want him on the field. He's a great asset on the field. And he talked about it was only a split second. One of his questions was basically, it was I took it as, are you adapting to the way that the offense is going to be run now with a lot more passing, or are you still doing you? And he kind of said, I'm still doing me. I still got to be fat. Yeah.
I mean, yes and no, he did, because he also talked about how he's changed all these different things that has changed for him, and that, like,
working on his arm a lot.
When he's in practice, he does all of these right things. He talked about with his elbow and where the placement of that and all those other things. But then he admitted, which I thought was great.
I get into scrimmage and it all goes bye-bye.
When live bullets happen and the kind of the stress and everything else, then I fall back to my old habits. And, he's acknowledging his faults, and he's acknowledging that he's working on it, and he still obviously has work to do. And I think acknowledging it is very good, especially publicly. So, I mean, you see the work that he's putting in. I mean, you might not visually see it, but you hear him say those things, and you can see that he's putting in a shit ton of work.
For sure.
As far as the rest of the week and the rest of what's going on with practice, I think the more we're hearing about this 3-team cycling thing, it sounds cool as fuck, to be honest. Yeah. It sounds like a really cool way to mix up and mix and match. We've got a ton of dudes that could be starting at any given time. And especially with, like, the question was asked of Knighton on Monday, what's it like now where you don't have to rely on one or two guys all the time, and then you're piecing in other guys every once in a while? I think they said, you now have waves of guys that can come in at the same time. And he mentioned something about, he was asked about Lenhart and how he's recovering from injury, and he basically just kind of jerked off all about the fact that he's so fucking smart, and he's an engineering student. I never have to worry about him making the right decisions, and he's doing well in school and all this and that. I'm just like,
said he's got straight A's.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm looking for him to take that next step, and I'm like, God damn, he was fucking good last year. If he makes a giant leap this year, watch the fuck out. He's gonna have NFL scouts a year out.
And I do love that they mixed all three of those teams up so much. It's like they just drew names out of a hat for each position.
Kind of, yeah.
And it's given guys a good opportunity to build some new connections. Like, you heard
every week it's different.
Yeah.
You're shaking it up every week, it sounds like.
But you heard it from...
Sort of. Like, they said that, like, whoever finishes first gets to keep... Like, it's almost like a dynasty fantasy league where you get to keep, like, so many guys... And then the other teams, like, if you're down at the bottom, you can pick so many guys off the team.
You've been relegated. We don't need you anymore.
Well, yeah, it's like some guys are protected, some guys aren't, and that's the way they do that. But sorry.
You heard it with the 3 different quarterbacks talking. The guys that they wanted to talk about were the guys that were on their team.
Yeah.
So they're already making those connections with these guys. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The one name that was mentioned by all 5 people that were on the podium for Wednesday offense was Nair. And we're all very excited about Banks, and we've heard about Banks leading up to this week. But for them to all bring up, like, I don't think I heard Banks' name once, but to bring up Nair and, like, Danny Kalen's, like, he's just a huge target with really great hands.
I thought they were talking about both of them when, new guys coming here, but...
No, the new guys were referenced, but...
No, but I mean...
Specifically, Danny Kalen called him out as being a giant target with really great hands, and Dylan Raiola even mentioned him by name, and I just, Satterfield mentioned him by name, and then, why the fuck can't I remember his name? The quarterback's coach.
Glenn Thomas.
Glenn Thomas. Fuck. It's been a long...
Write it down in your hand or something.
It's been a long... Glenn Thomas. That quarterback's coach. Glenn Sweaty Palms.
And he's going to go to the grocery store on Wednesday, and somebody's going to be like, what the hell's on your hand?
Thomas. What?
Do you guys have any Glenn Thomas left?
So weird. I asked him for his number, and he just gave me his name. No, I think it's cool to hear that because we didn't know. Like, we're all excited about Banks. It's kind of an unknown what we're getting out of Isaiah Nair because he's coming off a major injury.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we don't know what we're going to get out of...
He hasn't fully played in 2 years.
No, we don't know what we're going to get out of IGC.
Yeah.
What if IGC comes back and he's the player that we thought we were getting 3 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know.
I kind of feel like we should just not mention his name ever again, and then he'll actually get
Jed
to play
definitely
this year.
shouldn't pick him for any preseason.
no
awards.
shit.
Jed, you specifically don't get to say his name.
Jed's like a Madden fucking curse with his preseason picks.
The
for
last
wide
2
receivers.
years, the receiver that I pick
Wasn't on the team by this.
either
the start
gets
of the
injured
season.
or
Yeah, pick
leaves the
somebody.
team.
Pick somebody you don't think is gonna play.
yeah,
For all your shit. Thanks.
yeah. I'm gonna have that question next year. I'm like, I
There's
can't.
got to be a slow, short white guy that doesn't need to be out there. No, I'm excited by all of it. I think that the most that I got excited for all the press conferences this week was listening to Terrence Knighton.
Yeah,
The dude just like, he sounds like a coach and like one of the boys all at the same time. And when he speaks about people, it's like he speaks about everyone that he talks about with like this reverence and like this is my family. And, you know, I know a lot of people are nervous that we're going to lose him. We're going to lose Tony White.
well, that's
You
kind of
lose
what.
good coaches.
Yeah, you're right. That's kind of what I was about to say because I know that Tony White talked about Terrence Knighton because Knighton was going to be talking or did talk before. I don't remember the order of those two guys, but
Knighton went first.
I kind of thinking like when Tony White leaves, I wonder if Knighton's going with him wherever he ends up going is like maybe the defensive coordinator type.
They
thing,
weren't
you know,
part
it's
of
like-
the unit already that came with
I
Rhule.
know, but the way
No.
Tony White
I'm saying
talks
like Knighton's not any more with Rhule than he is with.
oh yeah,
Tony
no,
White.
Knighton is Knighton's with Rhule. That's why he came here, but
He has a history with him.
yeah,
Where?
I think at Temple.
I didn't realize that.
I think I'm not 100% sure.
I
but,
didn't realize that.
but still, like the reverence that Tony White has for Knighton, just makes me be like, yeah. Once Tony White leaves, I think his first phone call on his way, or maybe the first office that he stops at on his way out the door, is in Terrence Knighton's room.
Take it. Hey, buddy, you want to be a D coordinator? Yeah, he did go to Temple. My bad.
Okay.
I did not realize that. So yeah, maybe he doesn't get to steal him away. But I don't see him being the next guy at Nebraska when Tony White leaves.
No, a lot of people are saying it probably will be Dvorak, the linebacker coach.
Dvorak?
Yeah.
I would think Evan Cooper, but I don't know.
Maybe he'll just never leave, and we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll just all stay one happy family until we win like 5 natties.
Yep.
Pull a Nick Saban.
Why stop at
It'll be
5?
fine. Oh, 10? 10 sounds good. Do you have anything else on spring practice?
Nope.
Spring
I'm
training,
excited.
spring
I'm excited
ball?
to see some more. I mean, once we get to the spring game and can actually see some of these guys on the
Yeah.
field, it's going to be.
I mean, they've had 5 or 6 practices.
Yeah.
And the media has only seen like 20 minutes total.
I will say all of the little reels that I'm getting to see
Oh, it's
of
nonstop.
guys, just simple pass balls and stuff. I was just like, I can't. I got to stop watching. I'm trying to work right now. My desk is rising. Like it's a problem.
Yeah.
Speaking of balls being thrown, that was one thing that got me excited about Satterfield was we're really working on the deep ball and we're working on passing a lot more this.
You
Well,
should be. You got some
the thing
fast ass
is,
dudes that are on the outside.
When asked about that,
Or
though,
juice dudes.
Yeah, you got a lot of juice.
he wasn't necessarily completely working on just the deep ball. It was, Rhule talked about it, getting playmakers the ball. And
Get the ball in space, making a play.
they followed up and they asked him, like, are you talking about, deep passes? He's like, no, just getting the guys the
Might
ball
be a
in the
5-yarder,
location
but
that-
it's got to be in space.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing that I think maybe we slided Billy Kemp a little too much towards the end of last year when we talked about how he couldn't get open and he wasn't the yak guy that we thought he was.
Some might say we set the bar too high for the short guy.
Maybe you,
Yeah.
for sure you.
Well,
But he he also wasn't getting balls in space at all. He wasn't getting the opportunity as he was running through zones.
No. But the thing is, he had the most yards after catch for Nebraska all of last year.
Well, yeah. He also had the most yards for Nebraska all year.
But I mean,
I think
Still like 400.
I think your point is, Jed, if we could have gotten the ball a little more, he would have done a little better.
yeah. But
Gotten it to him in better spots is what I'm trying to say.
they also didn't really throw the ball that much. I mean, granted, some of it
Yeah.
is because it kept getting intercepted.
You posted the stat on our. John and Josh must have been talking about
They
something.
talked about run pass ratio a little bit, and they were curious on how that would look nationally. And if I can pull up the right thing,
It was something along the lines of we were like first in the country outside of military.
We were third in the country outside of if you take away the military schools, because all of them were above 70% run.
That's insane.
And Nebraska was third after that at 64.6 running the ball. And when you compare that to the rest of the country, and so we were at 64, the Big Ten was at 55% as a conference. The entire country was 53%, 53.8. And of all the power teams, it was 53.2. So we were way above the average across the entire country. So we didn't really throw the ball that much comparably.
We couldn't. We were getting drop after drop and pick after pick and fumble after fumble.
Well, and also, so in yards after catch, we were sixth in the conference at 5.2 yards after catch per catch. And of all the power schools, that would rank 52nd out of 68 teams. And as far as total yards after catch, we were 66th out of 68 teams.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So not great.
No, not good at all.
No, not at all.
I mean, it could be worse. Obviously, there were about 50 teams behind us, but not good.
I like that it's such an emphasis.
Yeah. Well, and Billy Kemp, he was actually above our average. He was at 5.5 yards after catch.
It's still not good.
I mean, it's not great, but if you're running the ball 65% of the time, so there's not very many options, and you're still sixth in your conference, I mean, it's basically average.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not great. I get all that, and I agree. But what do you expect when you're running the ball 65% of the time?
Yeah.
All that's to say that number should be improved.
And this may be the most unbelievable night in Cornhusker football history.